interview room. Muzzy checking in, the time's here. How you all doing? All right, let's begin. Let's have a chat about the fact that I want to interview the best fighters in the world, and that's that. Had a lot of guests from everywhere, all across the globe. Fighters tell me about the journey.
How are you guys? Mudzy here from Muay Thai Interview today. And today you're all lucky in that you'll be getting a 2 for the price of 1 deal. I'll be chatting with 2 guests who are both currently training and fighting out of War Santai Gym up in Chiang Mai. They're Whitney Tobin from USA and Deren Chen from Australia, who are both on sponsorships at the moment. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, mate.
Thanks for your time, guys. How's it all going up there?
Oh, it's good, yeah.
Really good.
I've noticed, and like you're both coming off your own fights as recently as last week. Whitney, you fought against a tough opponent in Bangkok on the Toyota Revo tournament, and a few days later, Deren, you fought at Taipei Stadium in Chiang Mai, stopping your opponent with some solid knees. Can you both just fill us in on the details of both your respective fights from last week?
So this last one was probably the biggest fight I think I've had for Santai because it was on the King's birthday and it was on the WPMF show. So there were also 3 other titles on the line. I think the opponent I had, Lifa, was probably one of the hardest girls that I've ever fought. I've rarely seen her lose. She hasn't really lost in about a year and a half, so I knew going into it was going to be a tough fight. But I'd watched her fight someone who I had trained with back at PTJ in Sydney. She had fought Yolanda Schmidt twice, and so I'd watched that footage over and over again. And I knew going in that she was going to be a southpaw, and so I was going to have to look out for the left kick and her really aggressive teeps.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I managed to catch the last few rounds of your fight, and man, yeah, she's got some hectic teeps on her, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah, they make me sore across the ring.
And Deren, tell us about your fight on last Friday, mate.
To be honest, for my fight, I really didn't know my opponent. Typical Thai fashion. I had absolutely no information on him. I didn't know how heavy he was. Well, we're supposed to be fighting at 67 kilos. He probably came in a little bit heavier. I'm not sure. Had no idea who this guy was, but going in there, I know I never underestimate my opponents. So I just go in there and I do what I train to do: keep my hands up, keep my guard tight, and just fight and do what my corner says. And I was lucky enough to come up with the win with that one.
I was going to say, yeah, because I was at the stadium watching you there, and he was quite bouncy for a Thai, wasn't he? He was like a lot of the Thais, they'll just sit there and tap the knee, but he was moving all over the joint. He wasn't a sitting duck target for you.
No, and that's it's good. Like it's good. It made me think, made me sort of think on my feet a little bit. As you said, he was quite bouncy and he was a little bit erratic.
Yeah.
Some of the Thais that I've fought before, but it was good. He made me think and made me adjust my style, and even though I came out with the win, there was still heaps of stuff that I got from that fight that I'll be working on back at the gym, so I'm glad I had that fight with him.
Yeah, he wasn't too bouncy once you got a hold of his neck. Now, you've both won stadium belts here in Chiang Mai. Whitney, you won the Chiang Mai stadium belt against a tough Italian fighter, Miriam Sabut, who I've watched her fight a number of times because she's been around for a few years now. She's a good fighter with solid technique. She's been living and training and fighting on the Chiang Mai circuit for a while now. And you've also won the Taipei stadium belt too. Would you be able to tell us about both those fights and what it meant to you to win not 1 but 2 belts in Thailand against tough opponents?
Well, the fight against Miriam was my first fight on scholarship, so I really wanted to put on a solid performance and kind of this was kind of like the opening act of my fights for Santai as a sponsored fighter, so I really wanted to start with a bang. But I had just fought in Australia a couple weeks before, so I was still fresh and fit. So I knew I'd be okay training-wise. But actually, funny enough, Miriam had trained at PTJ before, which is the same gym I'd come from in Sydney. So I talked to a few of my friends who had trained with her, so kind of got a feel of what style fighter she was. And for this fight, it was originally supposed to be at 57 kgs, and then her camp, about a week out from the fight, changed it to 56. So they made me cut an extra kg, which I wasn't too happy about. So I went into the fight. I'm already an aggressive fighter, but I wasn't too happy about it. So I went in with a bit more of a oomph against my punches. But she's a really tall and stringy fighter, and I'm quite short for my weight class. So I really rely on my clinching, and my game plan usually for most of my fights is based off of loving the grind. I love the grind of wearing someone down, not just in one round, but over 5 rounds, making them carry my weight and clinching, It's not the prettiest style of fighting, but I find I can break people mentally more that way. So I know usually by round 3 or 4 they're mine, and that way I can inflict most of the damage in the later rounds. So in that fight, we actually both ended up cutting each other, and so we were both bleeding by the end, which always makes for a better fight. I think when you earn your stitches. But it was always it's all love at the end of the fight, and we're fine with each other and whatnot. But it was great. I was looking over to my corner when they were reading out the scores. Like, my tie is okay, but like I wasn't quite sure what they were saying. And then afterwards, our trainers told me that I'd won every round. So it was a really great feeling to have that kind of be my showcase starting off for Santai, especially against Miriam, because Miriam's fought all around the world, and she's fought some of the best ties as well. So it was a name to have a good win against. And then for the top pay belt, that was at 57 kgs. And my opponent, she's got a really, really good right kick. So all I kept hearing before training for that fight was, she kicked like a man, she kicked like a man. So we really, really worked on blocking that right kick and taking away her distance, and just, again, wearing her down in the clinch, because that's my home, that's where I'm most comfortable, and that's where my conditioning and my fitness really pays off, because I can usually take away, so no matter how far someone's run or how many rounds they do on pads, if they start getting knees into the gut, that all goes to custard. So I ended up giving my opponent 2 8 counts in that fight, so it was a really nice way to follow up from the previous title fight, and especially having them back to back. And it was something really special for me, because I had a bucket list when I started Muay Thai, and that was to have, because I started in New Zealand, to have a South Island title in New Zealand, and then a North Island title, and a full New Zealand title. And I wanted an Oceanic title, and I wanted to fight for titles in Thailand. So for me, this was like a big bucket list.
Well, I'm glad you won that tape bout, and that you gave her the 2 8 counts, because like I was talking to you before, I've seen heaps of foreigners fight Thais for the stadium belts, and basically if they don't knock out the Thai, no matter how many rounds they win, I've seen mates and other people just get robbed blind. So that's why I was sending you a message going, make sure you knock her out, because if you don't knock her out, it's going to be hard to get that belt. I've witnessed it firsthand with a few of my mates.
It's actually not just like top pay as well. If you're fighting on TV, it's a lot harder to win as a foreigner, because you're fighting in someone's home country, so obviously the favoritism sits in the judges' seats, and normally it's a tie. So you have to do everything that you can. I mean, you do your best at the end of the day, and if the judges give it to you, you do. But you have to walk away knowing that you left everything in there.
Yeah,
even if you don't knock them out.
Yeah, because I've even had like a couple of my mates fight up there, and like I've bet with the gamblers on them, and like clearly one of my mates, he won okay, maybe he lost 1 round, but he definitely like won at least 4 rounds. And then they gave it to the Thai, and I was just like, "What? Are you joking?" And the Thais and the gamblers come over and took my money, and they just had this smirk on their face, and they just like walked off. And like even the one of the big guys from Tapo was like, "Yeah, no, your mate won. He won, but it was all to do with the gamblers."
Yeah.
And
We're quite fortunate with Santai, like with these title fights and with our like just normal top A and Chiang Mai Stadium fights. Nick and Oud do their best to make them even fights, so they're not just going to hand over easy wins to us like you see like a few other gyms that have foreigners fighting out of them. You'll see a huge discrepancy in weight, especially towards the foreigners. So it's really good that that they're pushing us to fight fairly.
yeah, and I do think that probably Santai is the best gym going around in Chiang Mai at the moment in terms of probably the training and also the quality of fights. Because, I mean, I'm sure you've probably seen it yourselves where, like, even, someone will have their first fight and they win by knockout in the first round or the second round, you know what I mean? And it's like a jab or a half-ass body rip, and it's... But every time I've ever seen someone fight from War Santai, they've always had good, hard fights, and even a couple of them have actually lost at Tape, but it's like, you know what, I'd rather go and see someone lose and have a good fight than win by that knockout.
100%, yeah.
and Deren, mate, sorry, we've been chatting a bit, but I haven't forgotten about you, buddy. You've also won a Tape belt, stopping your opponent in the 5th round. I watched that. I think you probably smashed him with about maybe 8, 9, 10 consecutive elbows to the head. And I've got to say, you looked more relieved than anything, and like a wave of emotion came over you once you knew that belt was yours. Give me your thoughts on that fight and what it meant to win a stadium belt.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's my first time fighting for any stadium title, so and first one for Santai, obviously. But I'm really glad I came out with that win. The fight was at 67 kilos, and we came in both underweight. So we weighed in the morning of the fight, came in about 66 and a half, and he was probably a few grams lighter. I noticed he was really tall, so I think that sort of played in my mind a little bit throughout the whole day. So I was like, he's a bit tall, and so I was sort of thinking about tactics throughout the whole day. My trainer, who was training me for that fight, Chen, he was giving me tactics throughout the whole day as well. Body punch, he's weak in the body, punch him in the body, low kick him in the leg. But I took all that in stride, and then on the night of the fight, you always get nervous before a fight, but the closer it gets, you sort of hone in and just focus on it and just go in there and do what you need to do. Going into the fight, first round was quite even for us, so we sort of started off slow, typical Thai fashion, just filling our process. He did hit me with some tricky shots in the first round, so I started keeping my hands up, and I was a bit more aware of his trickiness and stuff that he's going to do. We're sitting in a cafe at the moment. Some juice or something. And then coming into the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, he started to sort of turn it on a little bit. He wasn't hurting me much, but everything I was doing, he was stopping it with his range. So when I come in, he'll take me a little bit, breaking up my rhythm. He had really long arms as well, so he'll jab and sort of just break up everything that I was trying to do. When I landed something nice, he'll land something back as well. So in Thai scoring, whoever lands the last shot, they win that sort of exchange.
Yeah.
So coming into the 5th round, I knew that in my head, if I was not winning, or if it was not even, then I was definitely losing by a little bit. So round 5, the whole corner was just screaming, forward, forward, forward. You cannot go back. If you go back, you're going to lose. Yeah. So that's just all I had in my head. Just go forward, forward, forward. So we came out, and the first thing he did, he body locked me, and then he dumped me on the ground. So I thought, oh great, I gotta catch up even more now. And then we sort of exchanged a little bit, and then he tried it again, but I could see that coming into round 5, he was much more tight than me. So I had that gas, and I knew I just had to leave everything out of there in the ring. So he tried to lock me again. I escaped it and got into the corner. And then my trainer had been working with me a lot, but this overhand elbow. So if they've got their left arm out in your face, you sort of pat it down, you come over with an elbow. So I saw that opportunity, and I hit him with an elbow, and it landed right on the top of his head. And he sort of froze a little bit, and I thought, all right, this is my moment. I have to go for it right now. And so I hit him with one. He put his arm out again. I hit him with another one. It stunned him a little bit more, and then that's where that sort of barrage of elbows came. And I dropped him, and then I was still kind of in shock. The ref was like, "Go to the corner." So I went into the corner, and he didn't come back out for the out of the count. And so, I mean, I came out that, and I was just so relieved. Actually, I was like, this guy was so tough. Like I beat him. I can do this. I can go on and win more titles. And it was just a sigh of relief and so much emotion just coming out. So glad I came out of that fight alive.
And do they make you have to defend the belt in a time frame, in a certain time frame?
Actually, not quite sure how it works, but I do assume that I will have to defend it at some point. It was kind of strange. My last one was at the same stadium. It was a lower weight class, so I didn't have to defend the belt. So I think if somebody wants to challenge for it, then we will have to weigh in, and we will have to get me to defend that one. But for the time being, I haven't been notified of anyone wanting to challenge the belt. So I guess I'm still the champion for the moment until somebody decides to challenge me for it.
And has anyone decided to challenge you, Whitney, for the belt? I even think Miriam's actually fighting at Taipei tonight. I think she may even be fighting for another belt.
Miriam's fighting for the 56 kg one, and so for some reason I think they kind of pick and choose their weights for the belts, because like I've got the 57 one at Taipei, and she's fighting for a 56 one. So I'm not really quite sure how that works in the schemes of stadium defending belts. I know Nick's been trying to get a match for me to defend my Chiang Mai Stadium belt for a while now, but just haven't had an opponent that will step up and take it yet.
Okay. And Deren, how long have you been at Santai for, and how many fights have you had for the gym?
Me? So I've been at Santai for pretty much exactly 1 year now. It's actually a week. Next week would be my 1 year there. So I've been there 12 months, and I've only started fighting professionally for them here in Thailand. I haven't had any fights back at home. So I've had, in the 12 months that I've been here, I've had 10 fights for Santai.
That's a good effort, man. 10 fights in a 12-month period. And how long have you been training for altogether, and how did you find Muay Thai?
So I started off doing mixed martial arts, actually. So I did a lot of BJJ and wrestling and just stand-up striking. And like most people, I saw the UFC on TV, and I thought, oh, this might look interesting. So I sort of gave it a go, and I liked it. And so I did MMA for 2 years. And then after that, I started doing Muay Thai. So I've done Muay Thai properly for about 3 years. And this year in Thailand would have made it the 4th year. So all up, I've been training martial arts for about 5 or 6 years.
And so have you actually had a couple of MMA fights as well, or just Muay Thai?
Just Muay Thai fights. MMA is a completely different animal, man. It's a completely different game. It's just so much to it. I mean, I thought Muay Thai had a lot to it. MMA, you got the ground aspect, the striking aspect. There's so much. It's not easy.
if the opportunity ever came up, would you fight Muay Thai in the MMA gloves?
The coffee machine was going.
If the opportunity ever come up, would you fight Muay Thai in the 4-ounce gloves?
I think it'll be a good opportunity, but it really depends on, I guess, it's a lot of factors, like what weight I'll be getting at, how many rounds, how the rules, etc. I mean,
breaking your hand.
yeah, because it's so small.
The ratio of people breaking their hands in gloves is so much higher for like the curse that we're getting. It's not worth it, in my opinion. I think you're better to keep the boxing gloves.
Possible injury time as well if you break your wrist or something. It depends on a lot of things, but for the time being, I think because I'm only just really starting to fight professionally, proper Muay Thai, like I want to sort of keep doing that, and then I guess once I'm at a level that I'm proficient at, then we'll see what sort of avenues be available.
Yeah, okay. And Whitney, how did you get into Muay Thai? Because doing a bit of research on you, you seem to have done a bit of travelling. Like you're born in America, you've studied in New Zealand, and then as we talked about, I know you lived and trained in Sydney and fought under Andy Parham for PTJ for a while, and now you're in Thailand. So can you tell us about your Muay Thai journey?
It's a long story, but so back in the States, I was a competitive cheerleader for 8 years, and in my last year at uni, I was done cheerleading, so I got really, really fat. And I studied abroad, and in New Zealand, I met this guy, and oh, you come back to New Zealand, and I was like, okay. So I came back to New Zealand. That's when I was like, I hate working out. I need to do a sport because cheerleading was my way of working out. And he's like, well, I think you kickboxing because your brother runs his karate studio, and my brother did martial arts since we were 8 years old, and so he runs his own studio in Minnesota. And so my partner at the time was like, yeah, I'll take you down to the gym. And so this was in Nelson, New Zealand, which is in the South Islands. And it was this gym that was basically a shack. Like we trained on hardwood floors. There was a ring that was about like 25 years old. And like no covers on the ropes. Like it was pretty hoary, as they say. But I loved it. Like after 2 weeks of training, I was like, yeah, I want to jump in the ring. Like this is really awesome. So I went from being 72 kgs, and I dropped down to 60 kgs after 5 months, and then I had my first fight after training for 6 months. And for that gym, I had 6 fights, and right before I left, I won a South Island, New Zealand title, and my visa was up, and so I had to go back to the States. So that's when I started to train at Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, where Caitlin Young trains out of, and so I had a few fights for them, and my trainer from New Zealand gave me this opportunity. Was like, look, do you want to have an international fight? I'll fly you back to New Zealand. You can represent the United States. He's like, the only problem is I can't corner you though because I'm promoting that night. It'd be kind of a conflict of interest. Yep. So I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And he's like, but this guy, Mark, who runs MTI, can corner you. So I was like, okay. I've fought one of his girls before. I've talked to him before. So, we'll just do it. Because why not? Free trip back to New Zealand. So Mark and I had been talking on Skype and discussing the game plan for this fight and whatnot. Because he wanted to get to know me better. So we had these Skype trainings for about a month before the fight, And then when I went to New Zealand, I won the fight by TKO, and so I was like, oh man, I love this, because in New Zealand you fight pro-am rules, and in the States, even if you're pro, you have to fight with shin guards on. And I was like, so it was like taking a step backwards for me, because like my first fight was under pro-am rules, no shin guards, no headgear, you know, and throwing elbows. So I felt like I was taking a step back when I went to the States. So I was like, and Mark was like, come fight for me, come back to New Zealand and fight for my North Island gym. So for about 6 months after I went back to the States, I had a full-time job Monday to Friday, and then I had a part-time job on the weekend. And so I was working 7 days a week to save up for this visa to come back to New Zealand while still training and fighting. And so 6 months later, I moved to Wellington, and I started to fight and train out of that gym in the North Island, and that's where I met my fiance, who's a fighter as well. He's now retired from fighting, and he was actually fighting on that same show that I was representing the United States. So that's kind of how we met. And so I went and I had about 8 or 9 fights for that gym. And that was my first Thai trainer, Muay, who was a trainer at a Keep One Tip in Bangkok, which is run by Robert. And so that's how I knew about Keep One Tip. And I absolutely loved my Thai trainer. But after he left after 6 months, the gym kind of went back to more of a kickboxing feel, and I really loved the Muay Thai aspect, so I wasn't quite happy, and we started going to this underground open sparring that my friend Pat was running, and nobody was selling their trainers because everybody, it was like the best out of Wellington coming to this secret sparring session. So we had people from Jai, we had people from MTI, and then like people who just weren't at a gym, but they had trained in Thailand before. And like Pat was kind of the person who was like, okay, you can come and train, or you can come and spar, or you can't. And you had to have, you either had to be good, or you had to have a certain amount of fights to come to these sparring sessions, because we didn't want any grunts coming in. So we were a bit like, had our noses up in the air about it, but we didn't want any injuries, especially, you know, if we went back to training at our other gyms, and our trainers are like, oh, where'd you get that from, you know? So we wanted to make sure it was safe and technical sparring. And after going to these ones, I was like, you know, this is real Muay Thai. This is like what I've been training in. So I left that gym, and I started training with my friend Pat. And he's like, okay, I'll take you on as a favor. And then my friend Naira came with me as well. And we did our first trip to Thailand together, and at Keep One Tip, and I absolutely fell in love with Thailand. And so I trained with my friend Pat for a year, and then my partner got the job at UNSW in Sydney.
Oh, yep.
So, like, things had started to finally click for me underneath my friend Pat, and, like, he was introducing me to all these Thai fighters. He's like, oh, you know, like, you need to know what it's like to be a knee fighter, what it's like to be a kicker, what it's like to be a puncher, you know, what style do you like? Okay, you like that style, follow this fighter. And so he was like this encyclopedia for me about all these fighters that I didn't even know about, you know, like maybe they'd be average on the, like, you know, Thailand circuit, but, you know, they would, like, crush any foreigner in front of them. And you know, like, there's just not really, because of the language barrier, you wouldn't normally find these fighters, but my friend Pat knows Thai, so he's able to look them up and, like, send their videos to me. So, like, I was just buzzing over, like, all these new, like, information gates opening. But then all of a sudden, when my fiance got the job, I thought, oh, you know, like, I've just started, you know, so I was freaking out. And so when he moved over to Sydney, I decided to take another trip to Thailand, because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know anything really about the Australian scene where we're heading. So the second time when I went to Keep on Tip, I met Danny Jones. And I was like, hey man, I'm moving to Sydney. What kind of gyms are in the area? And he's like, well, there's two really good gyms. You can either go to SRG with Louis Regis, or you can go to PTJ with Andrew Parnham. I was like, okay. So I messaged my fiance. I'm like, okay, check out these gyms for me. Don't tell them you're a fighter. Just go in and kind of see what the feel is like. You know, be the fly on the wall and just, you know, see how they treat people, like especially new people and whatnot. And he said wonderful things about both. But the thing that really stood out about PTJ was that Andy remembered his name, like the second time he came back, and he knew like where he was from. Like I think Andy at PTJ. I went to a training session and I was like, it's that gym that I want to stay at. You know, like I walked in and I saw the Thai king and queen up on the wall. I saw that he had a Thai wife and Thai trainers. And I was like, yeah, this is the gym I want to be a part of. And then it was absolutely amazing working with Singh and Andy and Guan when he was there. Like, Guan and I really bonded. And it was Andy who actually really pushed me to go to Santai because Yolanda had gone there. And she was actually away at Santai when I first arrived. So he was like, they're going to have all these opportunities for you. And so after fighting for Andy, I went to visit Santai the first time in late October last year. So that's kind of how that all started.
And in terms of like female Muay Thai, out of all the countries you've fought in, which country would you say has the strongest competition and why?
I think it's different. I think as far as like the biggest hearts, I would say New Zealanders have really hard heads. I don't know what's in the water there, but like you can knock them around and they won't go down. Like it's crazy. And then like I think Australians are on such a rise right now, especially in like Sydney and in Perth and Melbourne. Because there's so many Thai trainers, so they're getting that first-hand experience. So the level is getting a lot better. I still think the timing's not the same as the Thais, but the actual strength of the women in Australia is stronger. But then when you fight in Thailand, you know, you have to turn into more of a puncher because the Thais will have a stronger timing game, but they're weaker in their stomachs, especially the girls. Like every time you go for the body against the girl Thais, and that's the way to beat them is either with knees or body punches or straight strong kicks to the body.
Yeah, I have heard that. And I've heard a couple of people have told me this, like, if you're a foreigner, if you sit there and try and play that tit-for-tat game against the Thai, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to win that. You're just going to have to head down, hands up, march forward, and just smother them and don't give them any space. Because if you do get into that kick for kick or punch for punch, 9 times out of 10, they're going to win that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not really about, like, I always tell people who are trying Muay Thai for the first time, it's like, I'm not better than you. The only difference is I've had more time.
Yeah. And
that's what it is. They've had more time. So they've got, like, you know, like an extra 5 to 10 years on me, you know, of practicing that, you know. And it's just like, well, if I had 5 to 10 more years, maybe we'd be even.
Yeah.
You know?
And Deren, I know you haven't had many fights in Oz, mate, but you've had quite a few fights in Thailand. What are some differences that you've noticed from Westerners fighting Westerners, or should I say, fighting in Western countries as opposed to fighting in Thailand?
So yeah, as you said, I've only really started fighting once I came out to here in Thailand. But from what I've noticed, if you're, for example, if you're fighting a Thai, the Thais like to take it a bit more easy, a bit more sabai, maybe round 1, 2. The money rounds 3, 4, and 5. That's when they sort of start really going. So 1, 2 is more like a warm up. Whereas what I've noticed with the foreigners is they really like to sort of start out with a bang. They like to just come out for it, rounds 1 and 2, and just start going for it. And if you notice, they start to rounds 3, 4, and 5, the ones that really count in a traditional Muay Thai scoring. They sort of, you can see them tiring out a little bit. Their technique gets a little bit more sloppy. They're a little bit more tired. What I do think is the foreigners are just much more aggressive. I feel like sometimes the Thais are too relaxed, so they sort of do just enough to win. So they're a little bit lazy in that sort of regard. Whereas for foreigner, if they see that you're tired or something like that, they will absolutely go for it. They've got I feel like most of them have stronger heart and cardio. So a lot of them train really, really hard for fights. Whereas compared to some Thais, they fight like every week, every second week. So sometimes they don't train as hard as foreigners. But I sort of understand that because it's doing Muay Thai in the Western world and doing Muay Thai here. It's really different. For some Thais, it's like they have no choice. They've got no other ways to sort of support themselves and their families. So they sort of just do it and they just want a paycheck. For us, it's more like a hobby. As a sport, we do it because we love it. We don't exactly need the money. I mean, if you know what we get paid to fight here, it's not much. You cannot live off that money. But it's just so different to back at home and fighting here. They do it just to support themselves, man.
Now I know, obviously you're in Thailand and you want to fight Thais, but do you have any ambitions or have you spoke to any of your trainers about possibly getting some fights against some good foreigners?
I will like to fight foreigners eventually, yes. I don't mind, like, whoever my trainers and my managers, Nick and Ud, if they want me to fight, I will fight. Because they, as Whitney did say before, they're really good at getting pretty even matches. So they're not going to throw you in with someone who's got like 300 fights. They'll try and find someone who's roughly around the same level, around the same weight. So all the fights that I've had here have coincidentally been Thais so far, but they've all had much more experience than me. I remember when I was in Ayutthaya, which was my very first like big show fight. It was on I think it was the Khao Samrit show, WPMF show. So the guy that I fought was from Khao Samrit. That was my 6th fight, and the kid had about 60 or 70 fights. But I mean, it didn't really matter. Whoever they put in front of me, I'm just gonna fight. And just leave it all out there in the ring. I mean, if he's better than me, then he's better than me. I'll learn for next time. But that's all we do. We just fight, just train, just do what we train to do.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Awesome. Now I've got a question for you both. Now, as I stated, you two do have scholarships or sponsorships, should I say, to train and fight. For people listening who may be keen on trying to score a sponsorship or are curious as to what that involves, would you both be able to explain to people what they can expect if they are lucky enough to secure one?
I think the first thing that most gyms would look for in a sponsored fighter is how long they're going to be staying there. Not necessarily your skill level, but they want someone who's staying there semi-long time, like 6 months plus. That's because they don't want to sort of train someone for a little while, get them good fights and whatnot, and then for them to leave and never come back. They want someone who's going to be there for a while so the trainers can actually work with them and help them improve and, just be there for them, really. What to expect? I mean, you're gonna have to train hard. You're never gonna find, or at the good gyms anyway, a sponsored fighter who doesn't work hard. Like a sponsored fighter wants to be there. They want to learn. They want to improve, and by doing all that, they're gonna get really big fights, and they're gonna see so much improvement in their game. Really, I mean, I came here 1 year ago. My level was about down here, and since working with Thailand, Pinson Chai, my trainer, he's just brought my levels up so much. I can't even explain it. He's just helped me improve so much. So I'm really, really grateful for him and for Santai as well. And I'm just going to keep working hard and improving.
I would say it's I look at it as a job, and for me, it's my dream job. So, but with the job, it's a responsibility. So, it's not like you're a paying customer. You have to show up at 6 o'clock in the morning, do your 10K run. Make sure you're always getting in the extra conditioning after pad rounds. You can't expect to be first on pads because you're not paying. Customers that are paying, they're the priority. And then we're next after that. So you have to keep that in mind and not be a bit delusional about that. The sun doesn't, rise and shine on you. So, and then, apart from, obviously, you want to win your fights, but you also, it's about your performance. So you have to do your best and show that you're consistently improving from the last fight, and then as well as not it being focused on a solo sport. You have to be able to work with the other sponsored fighters. So you have to be a team player, because if you're here on your you're making waves, it's just going to be harder for you. And you don't want that, especially if you're out here for 6 months at a time. And then lastly, it is a job, so you have to make sure you're picking up after in the ring, cleaning bags, and then always just be respectful, because your trainers are older than you, so you have to show them respect. And because it can slip every now and then, because you goof around with them a lot and you get quite comfortable, and so it does slip every now and then, and you forget, and you're like, make sure you why, and you can't always say what you want to say. You do have to filter yourself a bit. And what I love about this time around is that I eat with the Thais every day, so really getting to be active in their conversations every day is really opened me up for the culture of everyday life, because it's one thing to be a foreigner and pay and you go out to eat, for breakfast and lunch, but it's another to sit down with one of you put the trainers and talking about just nothing about silly stuff, or the stadium fights from the night before, and and the trainer's wife who's making the food, so you get kind of this family aspect, and and just those little things of helping with the food as well. It's a communal kind of living, and it's not singular and individual.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious to know, I want to know, what is the hardest training session you've both ever done at Santai?
Every day is hard, especially if you're training for a fight. They're gonna push you about 2-3 times harder than they're gonna push the guys who are not fighting. But I mean, to really single out one session, that's way too hard.
Or sort of what I mean is I don't know, just say for argument's sake, okay, for someone who's not fighting, they'll do the run, they'll do a couple of rounds of skipping, a couple of rounds shadow, maybe 4 or 5 or 3 to 5 rounds on pads, maybe another 3 rounds on bags, and then maybe a little bit of clinching, and then they finish up or whatever. So say that's a normal, just for argument's sake. What in terms of do they make you do like extra, like, I don't know, like, make you do 10 rounds on the pads, make you do 1,000 knees, make you do 500 teeps, make you go and do sprints at the end, make you go do tire flips, and just absolutely just run you into the ground sort of thing?
Wednesdays are usually the most brutal if you're in fight camp, because the fighters start at 3:30, so you do your skipping with your heavy rope for half an hour first before anyone gets there, and then it's straight into clinch for another half an hour, and then after that we take the customers through a warm-up, so that takes up half an hour of our time, and then we have to go on the bags and wait until it's our turn on pad rounds, and then our pad rounds are 5 by 5 minutes, and then one of my harder ones. And on Wednesdays as well, we have 10 rounds of boxing. So it's 10 rounds of boxing and then pad rounds. And then after pad rounds, my trainer Chen would normally have me do 10 minutes of knees on the bag. And then after 10 minutes of knees on the bag, he'd make me run another 4K. And then come back. And then when I come back, it was usually around 50 pull-ups, 300 sit-ups, and, kind of all that conditioning extra stuff, and also another 5 minutes of deeps on the bags.
Well, for me, I can't really single out, a particular training session, but I can tell you about, the hardest camp that I've had. It was for the title fight at Taipei.
Yeah.
There was another boy at our gym, Thai boy Lang. He fights probably about 48 kilos, but he is an absolute monster. So he was fighting for a title at Rangsit Stadium, so the True For You TV promotion.
Yep.
So he was fighting for the title there, and the timing wasn't really great for him because pretty much all the other Thai boys just had fights, or they were back at home, or they was somewhere else but not at the gym. So it was pretty much just me training with him, me being his solo training partner, and one of the other trainers, Chai, was there helping him out as well. So for about 2-3 weeks, every single day, we'll go for our 10K runs, whatever, come back, and it'll be straight away clinching. So I think it's good at Santai. We do a lot of clinching here. I feel like clinching is a really important aspect of Muay Thai. So we do probably 40 to 50 minutes on clinching straight away, and then we'll do 100 kicks each leg on the pads. Then we'll do our conditioning stuff after that. And that's just morning session. And in the afternoon session, it gets even harder. We'll do our 5 by 5 minute round on pads, and then just hard because we've got big fights coming up. So really hard for that. And then we'll do 5 rounds on the bag, and then more clinching. So maybe another 5 minutes in the afternoon. And then just the general conditioning stuff. So shadow boxing, sit-ups, pull-ups, weights, and that sort of stuff. Sometimes they'll make us even go for another run in the afternoon as well, maybe another 4 or 5Ks. So we did that. Sometimes we'll switch it up as well in the mornings. Instead of clinching, we'll do maybe 5-6 rounds of sparring, so good hard sparring. Did that for maybe 2-3 weeks just to prepare us for our fights. But it's hard. It's definitely really hard. It's not easy, but it got us in, I guess, for me anyway, it got me into the best shape that I've been in a long, long time. And really grateful for that, because coming into the title, the guy was going to be tough, and he was so tough. So it was maybe like 2-3 levels above me, but I mean, the conditioning really helped in the end in round 5. So yeah, it's training at Santai. It's not easy if you're a sponsored fighter. They're definitely pushing really hard. And this is one of the gyms that we train really hard at.
And also what I've just taken away from that is, if I want to come train at Santai, I won't come on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Just a Saturday.
You'll be fine.
Just a Saturday morning.
Thursday morning's always really tough.
Now, no doubt you both have had a very busy but productive year so far. Deren, I know you're heading home shortly just for a well-earned break, But following that, what's the plan fight-wise for you afterwards? And have you got anything else that you'd like to tick off your to-do list?
So I'll be going home tomorrow actually. So I'll be going home for about a month and a bit. Honestly, I think my body just needs it. We do after each fight we do get a couple of days off, but then it's like straight back into training and fighting. So it doesn't really get much of a break. So I've been here 1 year already, and I can feel injuries sort of piling up, and I think a nice little break is going to do my body good. My body would love me for it.
Yep.
When I come back, I want to definitely keep training hard and keep fighting. I think from what my trainer and my managers want me to do is they want me to start fighting more in Bangkok on the bigger shows against better opponents, and I'm definitely up for that. I'm definitely up for that challenge. I think when I come back, I might fight a little bit more in Chiang Mai or wherever, doesn't matter, just to get a bit more experience, because obviously I think my experience is sort of the thing that's getting in the way of getting me on those bigger shows, because the promoters will look at someone and say, oh, this guy's only got 10 fights, don't even bother with him. I think a little bit more experience would be good for me, just to get my name sort of out there. But then, I definitely want to start fighting more down south in Bangkok in the bigger shows. Eventual goal is always those straps, man. Those belts, those nice looking belts. But it's definitely have to work hard for it. It's easy to say, but you've got to still put in the work and just train hard and fight for what you want.
So are you saying that you plan to come back and keep training for the foreseeable future in Thailand, or you've got like a time frame in mind?
So I'll come back and I'll keep fighting. So my next race is going to last me for another year, so I'll be in Thailand for at least another year, and depending on how my career goes then, I'll see what I want to do. But at the moment, I'm loving every minute of it. I live such a blessed life. I can't ask for any more. You're out here in the motherland training and fighting. That's all we do. Hashtag blessed. It's the best life. I wouldn't trade it for anything else. But I definitely want to start fighting for much bigger shows, and eventually I'm gonna reach another big belt. So just gonna keep fighting for it, man.
Who knows, mate? You might even you keep going the way you go, and you might even get a few Aussie promoters flying you over to Australia from Thailand.
Oh, mate, that would be good. Get my friends and my family to come watch as well. That'd be awesome.
Awesome, mate. And Whitney, I know you're probably counting down the weeks and days before you get to be reunited with your fiance again after spending a lot of time apart. Can I ask, how much of that plays a mental part, like knowing you're in Thailand chasing your dreams and your fiance, he's back in another part of the world, still working, but at the same time he's still super supportive of you? I imagine that it must take a toll on both of you guys some days being so far apart, even though it's not forever.
The time difference does. So planning, when we talk to each other, it either has to be right after training or at night. So it's a bit of a bummer as far as trying to schedule, when I'm not too exhausted to talk to him. Because no one wants to talk to someone who's crabby, especially when you've been looking forward to talking to them. They're like, when is this over already? So that's always really hard. Because we've trained each other for fights, held pads for each other at our previous gym. So not having him here has been really hard as far as not even just having him hold pads, but just needing someone to come home to at night, just to give a cuddle, just not say anything, but I've had a hard day. Can you just shut up and hold me for a second, kind of moment. like I miss that the most. And but he's great. We kind of made a pact to because we're following his career that the deal was that I could get to come up to Sentai for 6 months. And because he was a fighter, he understands. He gets it. Like he gets the weight cuts. He understands. The days that I'm more tired. But it doesn't mean that we don't miss each other as much. And it's been really, really hard and draining. Just like I said, on especially like the weight cutting fights. When you're a bit more on edge, and you just kind of need someone who's there, who's seen you go through it before. Because like when you're in a gym with a bunch of people who don't normally fight, they don't understand, like why you look haggard. You have to explain
why are you
yourself.
so tired?
Yeah. Well, I'm only running off this much sleep and this many calories a day. Like just kind of that understanding. That plays a big part, but. We're getting married in February, so I'm really looking forward to that, and especially because we're going to have friends from the Muay Thai world, Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand, and America all coming, so it's going to be great to really, bring everybody together, but I'm going home in September, and my mom's already put her foot down, and she said no fights 2 months before the wedding because she's already seen me get cut twice on this trip, so she doesn't want me to ruin the pictures.
Wouldn't look good having a couple of nice shiners and standing there next to your husband, would it?
I was Manasak, one of the trainers here at Santa, was telling me that when he got married, he had just gotten a fresh cut, and so he had stitches in his wedding picture. So I was like, yeah, that's not going to fly with the relatives.
So are you settling back in Sydney, is it?
No, my partner actually got a job in America, so he's been back in America since January.
Yep.
And we still had our lease in Sydney, so I stayed in Sydney to the end of March because I had 2 fights lined up as well. So I hadn't seen him from January until mid-April when he came to Thailand.
Jesus,
and
that's a long time.
Yeah, so I haven't seen him since mid-April. So it's going to be really nice just to spend some quality time with him. And I haven't lived in the States in 6 years, so it's kind of reintroducing myself back to America again after kind of being just not having a real home, just kind of being more of a rolling stone. But we'll for sure be there for 2 years, so that'll be the next adventure, is trying to find an okay gym in New Mexico. So if anybody knows anyone, give us a shout. Because the best gyms are always the ones that aren't on websites. It's the ones that no one really knows about, and it's just people who've all been to Thailand. So worst case, comes down to it, I'll just set up my own bag, and we can hold pads for each other. So, but I'm really looking forward to, like Deren said, a break for my body, because for the last 2.5 years, I've almost fought once every month.
That's a top effort, that.
Yeah. So I just fight number 45 in Bangkok for me. So adding to my bucket list, I want to at least get to 50 fights before I retire.
So I was going to say, you're probably after you get married and everything's all settled down and you get settled, you're still going to continue to fight as well as train, or are you just going to train and just see where the fighting sort of takes you?
I'll have a look at, what the American, because I haven't been in America so long, I don't really know what the fighting scene is. When I left, it wasn't great. It kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, but just a bunch of people swinging arms at each other. And to be honest, I don't want to train hard for that. If it's still like that, what I'll do is I'll just keep coming back to Thailand to fight, because I'd rather fight people that know how to play the game. I don't want to you know, fight with
Brawl.
you know, I don't want to show up to play basketball and someone's trying to throw the ball at my face. You know what I mean?
Good analogy.
Like this is a dodgeball.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Right.
Funny, that's a technique at some time.
All right, guys, it's been great chatting with you. But before I let you go, if people wish to follow you, stay up to date with your training and learn about when your fights are coming up, how can they do that?
Just follow my Instagram, and I've made my Facebook profile public because I'm not a real believer in the athletes page because I don't think I'm a separate person from Muay Thai. You know, I'm just one person. So, yeah. So just find me on Facebook or Instagram underneath Whitney Tobin.
For me, I've got an Instagram page as well. It's public. So Deren, Deren .Chen, CHEN, #1. Go and follow that, guys.
Awesome. And anyone you guys wish to give a shout out or give thanks to?
Oh, that's a laundry list right there.
Yeah.
I just really want to say, first and foremost, you know, thanks to Nick, you know, for the sponsorship. Thanks to Chen, my trainer. He's too much English for him. And really thanks to my friend Pat, who kind of set me on the right tracks of discovering real Muay Thai, and Andrew Farnham and Singh Payat and Guan at a PTJ, just, you know, taking me in, being a veteran fighter, and, you know, making me feel home, you know, so quickly. And of course, I really have to thank Andrew, my fiance, for just, you know, backing me, you know, on this crazy dream of, you know, getting your body smashed day in and day out, but, you know, like, just understanding and, you know, yeah, and just thanks to everyone around the world who's following and giving support before and after the fights.
For me, I definitely want to thank the gym, Santai, and especially Nick and Oud, and also my trainer, Thailand. When I first actually just came out here, I didn't think that I'll really get to this point. But I mean, after my third fight, they offered me sponsorship. I guess they saw a bit of potential, so I just stuck with it, and they've helped me improve my game so much. So really, thank you to Nick and Oud, and also Santai. And also just basically to my friends, my family, and every supporter that we have out there. I mean, this is not an easy game that we're in, but to hear like words of encouragement and words of support, it really gives us fighters something to sort of go off on. So I'm really, really thankful for everyone out there who's supporting.
Excellent, guys. Well, love watching you fight, and can't wait to keep watching you fight and live your dreams, and just keep aiming for the sky, really. And thanks so much for your time, for having a chat with me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Stress.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
The great fighters around the world ask questions and investigate the lives of great warriors, revered and notorious, infamous and legendary. That to me is glorious. Come kick it, still talk some shit with me. I'll ask so you can answer and explain to me the history. I had to throw a vicious knee. I got a passion for the art of 8 limbs. I'm just asking from the heart. So as I conclude this interview, thanks so much for sitting through. Love to all the fighters and the folks that listen. This for you.